You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh. Good tea. Nice house.
And I'm Ari, and the owls are not what they seem.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes The Survivors and Who Watches the Watchers. But first, Obi-Wan Kenobi just premiered like 2 days ago, yesterday, at the time of recording.
Technically yesterday.
Yeah. Actually, no, like I was waiting around because I'm reviewing it for my YouTube channel, and then a friend of mine DM'd me at like 9 p.m. saying, this is not a drill, it's live. I'm like, oh, nice.
Was it really up at 9 p.m.? I would have just stayed up and watched it. Dang it.
Hey, I was happy because I was like, well, I'm going to be reviewing 2 episodes here. It's going to be a late night for me, but I actually went to bed earlier than I do when I just do like a Strange New Worlds video. Anyway, figured we'd talk a little bit about that. So we've both seen the 2 episodes.
I squealed a lot. There was lots of squealing. I'm a huge prequels fan. We've talked about this before. It's not a secret. I love the prequels. You told me to skip the recap because it was just recapping the prequels. And I was like, no, I love the prequels. So I watched the recap. And I don't know. I don't know. I love it. I have loved every single moment of it. When we're done recording, I'm going out to the living room and watching them again. That was my plan. Yeah, I mean, I'm in love with it.
What I wasn't expecting.
I have not watched your video, so I don't know your opinion.
Yeah, no, I love it too. But what I was not expecting, I wasn't expecting to see Leia at all, for starters.
No, that was a big surprise.
But she seems like she's one of the main characters of the show. And like the way she's written, it definitely feels like a younger Leia. But like because she's so precocious and so, like bossy and witty and stuff, in a lesser child actor's hands, it would have been a disaster. Like I really.
Oh, but the girl is a genius.
She's so good. Yeah. She's such a good actor that this show wouldn't have worked if they had got someone else. I don't think.
No, I think she's so good. She's so good at being little Leia. It's like she's a little reincarnated Carrie Fisher. Like, I don't know. She's got the attitude. She delivers the lines right. She also can do the like sweet, innocent child thing pretty well, too. But you can tell there's a little bit of like precociousness Leia behind her eyes when she's doing it. Like, I don't know. I think the little girl actress is a genius, or whoever it is that cast her is a genius, because I think she's really good. Like, I just love her. I think she's great. And no, I wasn't expecting to see her. Obviously, in the preview, we saw Luke pretending to pod race on top of the hut on Tatooine, right? But I think Leia was meant to be the Baby Yoda drop of this show, like, because she shows up toward the end of the first episode and it's like, oh my God. And it's funny because, it cuts to the planet and my husband goes, oh, it's like Naboo. And I started screaming. I was like, it's all drawn because she climbs those mountains when she's 14 with Holdo.
I haven't read those books, but
it's my one Star Wars book I've read. And so I was so excited. I was just like, oh my goodness. Because I had no idea. So, yeah, I mean, those of us who are Leia fangirls, obviously I was talking to Amanda about it as well. Because so we were messaging each other and she's like, yeah, I had no idea, except for everybody started messaging me, you need to go watch Kenobi right now. So, yeah, I mean, aside from Leia, I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. I think they have an interesting story going. I really like the I have not really watched much of the Clone Wars, so I don't know about the Inquisitors that much, but I really like...
The Inquisitors aren't in Clone Wars, they're in Rebels.
Oh, they're in Rebels,
yes,
okay.
And
I have also only seen a couple episodes of that.
Yeah, a couple of the Inquisitors that have shown up on the show are in Rebels, but the main one, the third sister... The one who's, the seeming like the lead villain, she's just in Kenobi. Right. She was not in Rebels. So she's a new character for this.
That's what we were trying to figure out because my husband's watched more of the cartoons than me. And so he was like, I don't remember her. And I was like, I think she might have been created just for the show.
She's a new character.
But the premise is really good. I had called that Vader would show up. I mean, at the time that he did, we all know he's coming because he's been credited with being in the show. But I am so ready to see, because I've expected this to be an Annie and Obi show, like that's what I've been expecting. And they threw me off guard with Leia. But I mean, it makes so much more sense because at first I thought they were going to have Ben interact with Luke. And I was like, how in the world? But I still got a how in the world about it, though, because how in the world is Leia not going to remember reaching out to Obi-Wan Kenobi 6 years later when she sends the "Help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope."
I mean, she says, "Years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars." But
Right.
it is a little bit weird that she wouldn't have referenced when he rescued her as a kid. But I don't think it's too much of a stretch. Also,
But what is Star Wars without plot holes?
Honestly, I was worried that the show was going to be Ben palling around with baby Luke, and I didn't want that to happen, and I'm glad it didn't.
I didn't think so.
I think that's all we've seen of Luke. I don't think we're going to see Luke again for the rest of the show.
I don't see why we would, because Luke's not a very complicated character. He's just going to be on that farm until the start of A New Hope,
there's nothing,
right? Like, we know
there's nothing for him to do. If you give him an adventure before then why is he stuck on that farm yearning for adventure that he's never had?
Right, exactly. Whereas Leia was off having adventures, like in all the books and everything. And so it's smart of them that they went this way. But yes, I'm very excited. I can't wait to see where it goes. I feel like this is going to be one of the better, probably one of the best Disney Plus shows. Probably. I will say, since we're about to talk about the survivors, which, I make a bunch of WandaVision jokes in my notes about the survivors. That, WandaVision, I just rewatched over on the airplane when I was out of town last week. And because I downloaded it to my phone so I'd have something to watch. And man, that show is so good, especially now with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness to be a capper to it. But I feel like with the way that Kenobi's going, I think it's probably going to be one of the flagship Disney Plus shows. I was really afraid it was going to be kind of cheesy like Boba.
Boba Fett.
At the beginning, Boba was kind of cheesy.
They didn't know what they wanted to do with that show because Boba Fett doesn't have a character. And so that show was basically just kind of like a middling of, it's kind of a sequel to Mandalorian. It didn't know how to find its own identity.
No, it didn't. And then you've also got a really good actor in Ewan McGregor carrying Kenobi too. Yes. So yes, I'm very excited. And with that, are we ready to talk about our episodes for today?
Before we do that, I would like to encourage everyone listening to, if you are feeling so generous, go check out and contribute to our Patreon. We like to do a bigger push for that. We actually just got our first patron a week or two ago. So
yay, thank you.
I have been consistently putting out these episodes 5 days early on Patreon, except for this one because we are recording on Saturday. So the earliest I can get this up is later today. But
yeah, that's my fault. Sorry, guys.
It's fine. But the benefits for joining our Patreon is you get the episodes early. You can also get access to a special area in our Discord, where you can submit ideas for these small talks we do before each episode. If you want something for us to talk about, that's open for you. At the higher tiers, you will get your name shouted out at the end of each episode. So we're at patreon.com/restofbothworlds. And even if you don't join the Patreon, go ahead and join our Discord. The invite link is pinned on our Twitter account. So have at it.
And I guess I'll learn how to use Discord now, right? Discord still confuses me, but it seems to be the technology that everybody's moving to. So I think I should probably figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, so today we are going to talk about The Survivors, which is the third episode of the third season. It first aired on the 9th of October, 1989. It was written by Michael Wagner and directed by Les Landau.
In this episode, they spend about 45 minutes telling a story they could have told in 15.
Yeah, I was so bored.
They get a distress call. They find the planet and its colony has been completely wiped out except for this one house with two elderly people who are totally fine.
And a perfectly manicured lawn.
Perfectly manicured lawn. Even though if they're building a new colony and they're botanists, I don't know. It feels like a lawn is probably not very practical. I don't like lawns anyway.
Yeah, I hate them.
But they were filming at a Malibu beach house, so the lawn was already there.
Right. It was a very 80s house, very 80s. Everything in it was very 80s.
So they're trying to figure out, okay, if the colony was attacked, why are you two left unharmed and just completely fine? And they, as it turns out, the husband, Kevin Uxbridge, is actually secretly an alien. A kind of an ancient godlike alien who's been posing as a human this whole time, but he's a total pacifist. and so he didn't do anything when the aliens came and attacked and like killed everyone. And he just went and
including his wife.
So he just went and recreated her in the house and just wants to be left alone. So, but you know, the way he's like acting like, oh, I just want to be left alone. It's like, well, it's rather suspicious when you're the only survivors of a, you know, massive like genocide, basically, and you're acting like everything's fine.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, I think he would have gotten away with it too if he hadn't subjected Troy to just the torture of hearing a song over and over and over.
Yeah, a really bad waltz. And like, I think in my notes I called it the music box pox. But yeah, I mean, I also said in my notes that I had Watermelon Sugar by Harry Styles stuck in my head for 2 weeks. So I feel you, Deanna, because I really did. And it was a terrible song to have stuck in my head. But like, I mean, like there was, I would say probably like 5 or 6 minutes of the episode were taken up watching Deanna writhe around on her bed.
So I can actually relate, like not in the way that it's an earworm. I mean, I've had earworms, but like they're not things that like are actually torturous. But even though like just hearing the song itself isn't painful, it's just the inability to turn it off, and it's just the constantness of it that it's like Chinese water torture, just the perpetual drip of the water on your nose. One time I had an eyebrow twitch that lasted for a week straight.
Oh, and a whole week. That's terrible.
A whole week. And, you know, it's not like it's painful or anything. It's just annoying. But by the end of that week, I swear, I was like driven so crazy by it. I was about ready to just like stab my eyebrow to sever the tendon. Which would not have made things better. But like I was driven so nuts by it, I was considering it. Would make the
twitching stop.
What is the line from A Good Place when Jason's like, anytime I have a problem, I just throw a Molotov cocktail and all of a sudden I have a completely new problem.
Yeah, exactly. And as somebody who's had like chronic migraines my whole life, as I lay there in pain sometimes, I'm like laying there thinking about it and I'm like, if I just sever this vein behind my eyeball, all my pain would stop. Like I'll sit there because I can pinpoint where the pain is coming from, and then I'll be like, no, this is a terrible idea. And then I saw the movie Pi and I was like, oh, someone else had the same idea. But yeah, no, so that was the music box pox, and then it turned out that he was doing that to keep her out, right? He must have identified her as some sort of telepath, so he was like, oh, I need to block her out.
Now, I gotta ask, though, because he had been living as a human for like,
I think he said 50 years. Yeah.
Well, they had been married for 53 years. So, you know, yeah, a little bit longer than that. But he was living on Earth. And are there no Beta Zeds or Vulcans on Earth? I mean, Vulcans are also a telepathic species.
I guess he never ran into one. I don't know.
Yeah. How did he go that long without running into a telepath on Earth?
Maybe in general, if he's just living his life and not being investigated for being the only survivor of a nuclear holocaust, maybe that's what the difference was.
Yeah. When Deanna's trying to sense the feelings of an entire world and there's only 2 people on it, she's going to pay closer attention. If there was a god just living as a human on Earth, but you're a telepath, well, you're surrounded by billions of minds. So
like a shield.
Yeah, you might not be able to pinpoint it. And also, she was looking close.
Even if, and she's trying to figure out what's going on with these people. Yeah. And now that we know the end of this episode, if she had poked hard enough, she was going to find out Rishan wasn't even a real person, probably. Right. You know, because I'm sure the thoughts of a not real person and a real person are different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then they get chased around by a fake ship for a while that obviously we find out later that Kevin the alien is creating. And I kind of had figured that out. Like, I knew it wasn't real. And I was like, but how? I thought it was going to be Rishan. She was the more famous actress. Like, I'd seen her in more things. And she was more, like, outgoing. So I thought she was going to be the alien or the monster or whatever word you want to use there. I wasn't expecting Kevin. So at least that part, they got me on that. I was not expecting Kevin to be the Dowd, I think is he called himself.
Yeah. And honestly, though, because Picard also has his suspicions, he's like, I don't know, this warship doesn't seem to be behaving correctly. But like, he basically on a hunch, figures out the whole thing. He figures out that Kevin must be some like all-powerful alien. And
I was wondering if he was going to be a Q.
Well, he could have been. Like, I mean, his powers are very similar. But like Picard is even willing to let them die to satisfy his hunch. And I'm just like, dude, you're so lucky you're right.
I know. I thought about that too. I was like, man, you could have killed everybody and the hubris there would have been amazing. But, you know, I was like, yeah, but he was right because, of course, he was right because he's the Picard. Sorry, wait, that's next episode.
But so, you know, they're talking to Kevin about what happened. And he's like, yeah, no, I am a total pacifist. I don't kill people. But so when the Husnak or whatever the alien species was that came to attack the colony, he's like, I didn't do anything to defend them, and my wife went to fight them off, and they killed them all. And when I saw my dead wife's body, I went insane and I killed the Husnak.
I went WandaVision. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're like, well, I think that's reasonable. And he's like, no, you don't understand. I didn't just kill that ship. I didn't kill 100 Husnak or 1,000. I killed all of them, even the women and the children.
The children. They're animals. I slaughtered them like animals.
But no, he wipes out 50 billion peoples all across the universe.
That's quite some power that Picard just says, okay, well, enjoy your planet and leaves.
That's the thing, because, you know, he says, I will submit myself to your judgment. And Picard says, we don't have a law for what you've done. And I'm like, it's called genocide, dude. That's actually, I would really hope that the Federation has laws against genocide.
Yeah, no, I said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was such a weird response. It was such a, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. We'll just let you go live your life out on this planet with all your unlimited power. Bye.
I mean, there's not much that they can do if he doesn't want to be punished. Like anything he did would just be him, you know, being there willfully.
Right.
I mean, and he obviously does regret his actions because he's been a lifelong pacifist, and then he goes and the first time he kills anyone, he kills everyone.
Yeah, but if we just let people be punished by their own guilt, then we don't need to have laws, right? I don't know. It just felt so weird to me. It felt so like, oh, you have all this unlimited power, let's throw you on this planet by yourself. But I mean, it's a nuclear wasteland now, right?
Well, it's a nuclear wasteland, but he's a mortal alien who can survive anything, and he just creates the environment he wants to live in. So,
we just need to put Wanda on her own planet.
Yeah, he just needs to WandaVision up some more people, basically.
He does, yeah, without, putting them under a terrible spell.
Well, I mean, for him, it wouldn't be putting anyone under a terrible spell. He's creating everything.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Because Rishon was dead, so he created Rishon.
Apparently, he created some good tea in a nice house.
Good tea, nice house. That bit from Worf has been just a long running meme.
Well, it's the only good moment in the entire episode. I'm not trying to shit on the episode, I guess, but I was so bored. Like, I was like, when they started chasing that other ship around, especially when it came back the second time, I was like, this is so boring because it's obviously not even a real ship. I don't know. I didn't enjoy the episode much.
And we kind of it kind of kept hitting the same note over and over again, basically, especially with the ship. And it was like, okay, they're doing some of this just to fill time. And it reminded me so it was a TOS episode called The Alternative Factor, which involved a mad scientist who was being hunted by his antimatter duplicate from another universe or something like that.
Oh, and interesting.
There was a story point where he's climbing on Kirk's rock, where they always filmed everything.
Right, yeah, the rock.
And where we're going back to in the next episode we review. But, he would just wander there, and then he'd just fall off the top of it, and they just have to take him to sickbay. They did that plot point twice. He falls off it, they take him to sickbay, he gets better, he beams back down to the planet, he crawls around on the rock, being crazy, falls off it again, so they have to take him to sickbay again. They did that just to fill time.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, it did seem like there was a lot of filler because there wasn't even a B plot, because the B plot was Deanna's music box, right? So like there was an actual B plot going on. And so they were trying to fill it with, if they had actually spent some time with the philosophical like discussions about the way that his powers worked or what he did, I think it would have been more interesting. But instead it was just like, oh, you killed everybody. Okay, haha, enjoy the planet. Goodbye.
They should have cut one of the starship chase scenes and instead had the last act be like a philosophical discussion with among the senior staff of what is to be done about this genocide guy.
Right. Yeah, I know. I don't know.
But Picard just waves it off like, oh, you're not subject to our laws because we don't have a law about genocide, apparently. Yeah.
And then how about that part where he was like, well, we'll just sit outside the planet and watch you for the rest of our lives. I was like, is that your new mission? Is that it? What's the Federation going to feel like about you sitting outside this planet and watching them?
He was calling Kevin's bluff. He gave Kevin, because he figured out what Kevin was at that point. So he was giving Kevin the conditions by which he would leave the planet. And it was, we will be in orbit of the planet as long as you are alive. And then he has the ship show up and blow them up.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. I don't know. I didn't like this one. I felt like it was missing a bunch of the crew. I felt like there wasn't any good jokes. Like, you know how usually, at least if there's a episode that's not fun, at least we get bad dialogue to make fun of, you know? Like fun stuff, jokes, like the one where they're trapped in the novel and Worf picks up the phone and doesn't know what it is. Like all we get is the nice house, good tea or whatever line. And it felt like it was lacking something. The next episode is Who Watches the Watchers. It is the 4th episode of the 3rd season. It first aired on the 16th of October, 1989. That's my mom's birthday. Written by Richard Manning and Hans Beimler, and it was directed by Robert Weimer.
All right. So I heard before we started recording that you didn't like this one very much. But I think it's one of Star Trek's better episodes. So let's debate me, bro.
All right, let's debate. So I thought that. Well, let's talk about the plot real quick. So there is, it's a Prime Directive episode.
Yes.
Where they screw the Prime Directive, so they're like, well, we already did that, so let's just take it all the way. and then I don't know. I thought just like the first episode that we talked about, there was a lot of time spent on plots that didn't matter, like drawing out parts that didn't matter, like whether OG saw what she saw and whether he had actually gone up to the ship. Like there was all this time spent with the Proto-Vulcans that was like in the end didn't actually matter, because what mattered is when Picard brought Nuria up to the ship, right? So that's my main complaint, is that it felt like a bunch of filler. The last half of it was really good, but the first half of it was kind of all over the place.
Well, I think a lot of it was just setting the stage and showing how superstitions can come about and watching it develop through the episode. So the plot is that there's a anthropology thing going on this planet, Mintaka 3, but they've got a holographic duck blind that is failing. So the Enterprise goes to like help fix it, and there's like an explosion that hurts a bunch of the anthropologists, and one of the Mintakans sees the duck blind, climbs right up to it, and then gets zapped and like falls. And so they're like, oh shit, and they beam him up to sickbay. And Picard's like, why would you do that? You should have just let him die. It would have.
Yes, because Crusher can't break the Prime Directive. Only Picard can do that.
Right. Yeah. But then they're like, she's like, oh look, we can wipe his memory, and she references Pulaski. Did you catch that?
Because, yes, I did. I said, right, it says right here, Bev referenced Pulaski, but where did Pulaski go?
she went. She's like just behind the camera. She's just over there. But because it was a memory wiping technique that she had used on that little girl in Pen Pals.
Yes, that's right. The one where Data broke the Prime Directive.
Yes. But it doesn't work with Mintakan physiology. He remembers everything when they beam him back down, and there's like they start and like it's been established that these are a very rational society. They don't really have superstition anymore, and they're Like, I mean, the reason that those two saw the duck blind in the first place was because they were doing like scientific research. The guy's daughter was studying the sun at its zenith because she's doing some experiments or something.
And both the father and the daughter were famous people, because the dad is Leland Palmer. He's been in a million things, but he was Laura Palmer's dad on Twin Peaks. And the daughter was Pamela Adlon, who was, the thing I know her as is Marcy Runkle from Californication. But it wasn't until like 5 minutes in that I realized that was Leland Palmer, and I had to like pull that thing up on Prime that shows me who the actors are. And I was like, yes, it is him, because he's Laura Palmer's dad, and he's actually the one that killed Laura Palmer. And so I was like, oh, it's he was possessed by a spirit at the time. Right. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, yes, 35-year-old spoilers here if people are concerned about Twin Peaks spoilers. But I was really excited that it was him, because I really like him as an actor. He's been in a lot of stuff, but that's the thing I think of him as, is Laura Palmer's dad, so I was excited he was there.
They realized that there's still a member of the anthropology team that they haven't accounted for, who
was named Palmer.
Is named Palmer.
I know.
And they figure he must have like crawled off into a cave, because they can't find his life signs, and the caves would be blocking that. But the Mintakans find him. And so they're just like, well, shit, they've already got this, like they had an old superstition that nobody believes in anymore called the overseer. And because the guy who was beamed up to sickbay saw Picard and saw people talking to Picard, and everyone was answering to Picard, he reasons that Picard is the overseer. Yeah. And once they find Palmer, an alien, they're just like, oh, this must be one of the Picard's servants. And Riker and Troy beam down disguised as Mintakans, because they're trying to be like, oh, well, this isn't, come on, this is all a bunch of gobbledygook.
They beam down to gaslight an entire civilization. Yeah.
But things don't go well. Riker is able to get Palmer free from the Mintakans and like beam away, but then they're like, well, these were travelers, we don't know them, and Riker and Troy came together, so we're gonna hold Troy captive, and they can't like beam her up because she's just right in the middle of all of them, and they're trying to limit further exposure. But eventually it's just like, look, the impact to their society is already there. The Prime Directive has already been violated, and the leader of the anthropology team suggests that Picard go down, and because they're developing a religion around him, that he should just go down and give them commandments. And Picard's like, no. I
think they should have called that Operation 3PO.
But Picard's like, no. These people have developed a rational mindset, like, millennia before humans at a comparable level of development, and I'm not gonna undo all of that progress. So he beams the leader of the village, and he says, this is one of my favorite quotes, "I'm going to show her how the magic works." She's going to be in the room where it happens. So he beams her up to the Enterprise. And she's just like, oh, I'm in the presence of God. And he's like, no. Here, like, he makes a parable, or like a parallel explanation where he's just like, human Talkins live in huts, but did you always live in huts? She's like, no, we used to live in caves. And he's like, okay, did you always have bows? No. So imagine you met somebody who didn't have a bow and only lived in a cave, and here you are with your hut, and you've got a bow, and you can hunt a deer thing from like a really long distance. They would think that you were magic. It's like, well, likewise, we just have developed techniques that you haven't yet. And he thinks he's getting through to her, but then she's like, starts asking him if he can bring back people who died like the previous winter, right? Which obviously he can't do, but they figure he can bring people back to life because they thought that the dad died. Liko, I think his name was, because they thought Liko was dead, and they thought, oh, well, you brought Liko back from the dead, so can you bring back these other people who died 8 months ago or whatever? And fortunately for the plot, one of the anthropologists is dying in sickbay. Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately for her, but great for for Picard's argument, because Picard brings her to sickbay and watches the woman die. Right. And she realizes, oh, they can't bring people back from death.
Right, because if we could, Tasha Yar would still be a member of the Starship Enterprise.
That's right. And so then they beam down, and she's just like, no, he's not a god. They're more advanced than us, but we just, but then like another guy there is just like, no, he is a god. And he's like, I'll prove it. And he like pulls out a bow and arrow, and Picard's like, yeah, go ahead, shoot me. If you do that, you'll just you better hope you're right, otherwise you're just gonna murder an innocent man.
Yeah.
And then he does shoot him, but like somebody like bumps him, so he only gets him in the shoulder, so he's okay. But seeing that God can bleed makes them stop believing in him, and they get Troy back, and everything is all's well that ends well. I guess, yeah. I imagine there's still going to be some residual story, like 2,000 years from that point. Most people will have forgotten, or it would have just been like, oh, that just sounds like a folktale.
Right, because it reminded me of alien abduction stories, right? Yeah.
And this is just one village, and, they might tell the story to other people, but it's just one of those folktales, and details will get lost along the way. So I think ultimately they will, they probably did do a good job in minimizing the impact to the culture.
But maybe if it's such a big deal not to break the Prime Directive, we shouldn't have scientists in duck blinds on underdeveloped planets.
That sounds like a good idea. But if they did that, we wouldn't be able to have one of the Star Trek movies, because we actually have Star Trek Insurrection has a very similar premise to this, in which they are studying a primitive culture on a planet with a holographic duck blind.
Oh, that's why it feels so familiar, because I've seen the movies. Yeah, okay. I felt like this episode felt so familiar, and I thought maybe I had just seen memes of like Riker and Troy dressed up in their Ren Fair costumes or something. I was trying to figure out why it felt so familiar when I was watching it. So here's a question about the Prime Directive for you, though. So now that we're at the end of the episode, and they're like just going to leave them with these like 80 people know what happened or whatever. Sure. And they say, now you need to go on and develop your own, science and get out into the stars and become explorers and all this kind of stuff. Okay, fine, because they would have developed that anyway, like we did, right? So, or any other civilization did. But couldn't you argue that for the thousands and thousands of years it's going to take them to develop that, and people are going to die of diseases that we have cures for, that the blood is all on the Federation's hands for not coming in and helping?
If you have the knowledge to save somebody's life, but they're on the other side of the planet and you don't even know they're a problem, did you do anything wrong by not helping them?
Yeah, I don't know. Because that's what I'm asking. Because now he's leaving them, right? They're in their Bronze Age. That's what they said at the beginning.
The point is that they don't interfere with the natural development of other species, because that's something that these species have to be able to develop naturally and build their own cultures. And there's going to be a lot of deaths from disease and stuff like that, but that's how every planet develops.
The sheer number of people that'll die of cancer when they're standing right there with Bev, who could teach them how to cure cancer or whatever disease we're talking about that Star Trek has cured at this point. So it's just something I was thinking about at the end of the episode. Like, I don't know how much.
It's a tricky proposition. If we went out into space and we discovered other sentient life, first off, I don't even know if we would recognize that they're sentient, because as far as I'm concerned, like, orcas are basically as smart as we are, and most people just treat them as animals because they don't have hands, so they can't build anything. So, would we recognize other life?
I've always thought aliens would be bugs, because there's so many bugs on our planet that on another planet they would have been the dominant species,
I just think it's a difficult decision. It's a difficult question, but ultimately the Prime Directive is there to avoid the colonial aspects of exploration that have always tainted human exploration on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Trying to prevent that from happening in space. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I get that too. It was something at the end of the episode. I kind of had this weird taste in my mouth. And I was like, so now you leave them for thousands of years and think of all the people that are going to die when you could give them the cures to all those diseases and stuff because you have them in the memory banks of the Enterprise, you know?
Yeah, but like, I mean, can they take responsibility for every planet in the galaxy? That doesn't seem feasible.
No, not really. Yeah. And then they have to be equal, I suppose, across the board. But they always, on these Prime Directive episodes, it always feels like they're almost saying the Prime Directive just doesn't work. And that's why we have to find workarounds every time we're there.
Well, that's, I mean, it certainly is there. Like the Prime Directive is always there to, you know, cause a conflict in the episode. It's
right.
Like Batman's no kill code. There's, you know, arguments that if he didn't have that no kill code, he would have saved a lot of people in Gotham. If he just killed Joker, how many people would still be alive now? Instead
of putting him in the easily escapable Arkham again. Yeah.
Right. But that makes for a good story conflict. And when you violate the Prime Directive, you make a good argument for why, in that case, it was the right thing to do. I was just talking with some friends last night about how in the Zack Snyder DC movies, Batman kills, and they don't even address the fact that he kills. He just kills. And I'm like, I'm okay with a story in which Batman breaks his no-kill code, but you should address it. You should make that a primary part of the story. You should address what,
because he's going through something usually. Yeah. It's kind of like Doctor Who and his no gun rule, you know?
He should grapple with the consequences of killing. You should see him, like, it should weigh on him, and you should see him struggle with it. It shouldn't just be I guess he just killed all those people in that scene and then it's never addressed again.
Right.
So, like,
no, I agree with that.
I think there are times when it's moral to break the Prime Directive, but that should be the story, right?
Right, which was in this episode.
Yeah.
The other thing about it is that maybe it should be looked at as more like a guiding principle rather than like a legalistic, you must do this or you're breaking all the rules, you know, like, and more like the guiding principle here is not to interfere, but like if you're going to cause more problems by not interfering, I guess you have to interfere, right? Because that seems to be almost every Prime Directive episode.
And that seems to be the thought process behind the writers of Star Trek, that particularly for Picard, he does not really hold a legalistic view of the Prime Directive. He sees it as, you know, a moral guide, but if it causes more harm than it would otherwise prevent, he is willing to break it.
Yeah, and that makes for an interesting conflict, which is what made the second half of this episode interesting. When I told you that I found both of these episodes to be kind of boring, it was just that there was a lot of exposition at the beginning of this episode that I didn't really feel was necessary. We could have gotten into the crux of it faster.
Mm-hmm.
That was my main complaint about this episode. But in general, I liked it. I do usually like going down into civilization episodes, you know, but like, once again, we were on the original series set, you know, like, and it was so interesting in the first one because we were in that different camera view. Do you know what I mean? Where they're the outside camera view when they were at the Malibu looking place with the yard. It had that, like, we're outside on Star Trek look to it rather than we're on a TOS set, you know? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because they were actually filming on location.
Right, yeah. And so the two episodes being back to back, I think I just came into this one with a bad taste in my mouth from the first one. I think that's what kind of helped because once I got to the end of this one, I really loved the part where he was taking Nuria around the ship and showing her things and proving that she wasn't.
Can we talk about the Christ parallels in that whole thing?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He beams her up and he says, be not afraid, or don't be afraid, or something like that. And then he asks her to feel the warmth of my hand, the rhythm of my pulse. And I was just like, put your fingers in my side.
In the hole. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I thought it was pretty obvious that the parallel was to show people why there would be no religion in the future. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of the point. I
have written in my notes, Picard tips his fedora. And it's when the anthropologist is suggesting that he go down and give them commandments, and he's just like, no, I won't undo centuries of rational development and have them go back into superstition and fear. And I was just like, yeah, I've heard this argument on r/atheism. Actually, that scene got reposted to r/atheism all the time back in the day.
Did it?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. But yeah, there was a ton of parallels. I thought it was kind of clever and interesting. And I thought it was an interesting way to like introduce atheism to people without being like, this episode's about why believing in God might be dumb. You know, like, I don't know. It was just like, this is what it looks like when you know, believe in these old superstitious religions, you know, and I don't know. I thought it was an interesting parallel. The other thing, and this is just something I'm going to bring up at the end that I wanted to talk about the first episode.
Sure.
Was that it reminded me of that story you wrote. Didn't you write a story about two old people at the end of the world? Oh, when you were doing NaNoWriMo, and when it first started, I was like, "Oh, this is like that story."
And
I meant to bring it up during that episode, and I forgot.
I think
it was long ago now.
I think I only got 30,000 words in that story, but it was
that was the one where you finished the story before you hit 50,000, and you were like, "Why would I keep writing?" And I was like, "Why would you keep writing if it's done?" You know?
Well, no, I think I just got bored of the story and just it was like two people wake up and all of humanity has disappeared, and it's just them having to survive in the newly created wilderness and stuff like that. And then I don't know, I didn't really have a plan for why everyone had disappeared at first, and I think at the end I just decided, it was the rapture and God just missed those two or something like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah. But yeah, when that episode started, I was like, I wonder if he like subconsciously got like inspired by the episode
from that
or whatever.
I don't think. No.
Okay. So thanks for joining us today. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at Rest Both Worlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.